was the old matriarch envied by everyone in the capital, a lifetime of filial children, a harmonious marriage, dying peacefully of old age. But only before my death did I learn that my perfect life was nothing but a joke. Me husband, who had been gentle and refined his whole life, cursed at my corpse, saying if I hadn't forced myself on him in marriage, his true love wouldn't have married the wrong person and been tormented to death. He even had our son and daughter, after his death, move his true love into the ancestral tomb to be buried alongside him. I floated before the mourning hall, feeling only how absurd it all was. Without my money and efforts, how could a mere illegitimate son like him rise through the ranks and become prime minister? After my rebirth, I returned to the day the two families arranged the engagement. This life, I'll grant his wish. When his family came to propose, I said, he and I are merely acquaintances. The one he loves is the tofu beauty from the west side of the city. The moment I said this, the front hall that had just been warm and harmonious instantly fell silent. Liang Wenxi, who had just been sitting silently beside Madame Liang, had already stood up, instinctively refuting me. Rezhen, what nonsense are you spouting? In my past life, on a fine day just like today, Madame Liang brought Liang Wenxi and the matchmaker to discuss marriage. Mother had the maidservant, Mingyue, take me to hide behind the screen to observe. Hearing the matchmaker say we were a talented man and beautiful woman, a match made in heaven, I secretly blushed with shyness. Back then, I had already fallen for his schemes and believed we were in love, so I lightly tapped the screen 3 times to let Mother know my intentions. Later, when my father returned to the manor and learned of this, he specifically summoned Liang Wenxi, and the two talked in the study for a long time. I don't know what he said to my father, but in the end, he got my father to approve the marriage. After that, the two families quickly matched our birth charts and set the wedding date, and with a grand dowry procession stretching 10 miles, I was married off as a wife of the Liang family. For the next 50 years, I always thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. Me husband was ambitious, rising to become prime minister. Our 2 children were filial. Our marriage was harmonious, and there were no concubines in the household. Until one day I suddenly collapsed during a family banquet, and I could feel my end was near. Liang Wenxi had also grown old, tears smeared all over his face, calling out to me again and again at my bedside. Rezhen, slow down. Wait for me. I smiled, raised my hand to wipe his tears, wanting to tell him I was dying peacefully of old age, telling him not to cry. But I could no longer make a sound. In my final moments, I struggled to open my eyes wide, wanting to look at my husband's face one more time, and also wanting to tell him that my life had been complete and smooth, and I had no regrets dying now. But I still couldn't say it. The imperial physician shook his head under the gaze of my family. My consciousness gradually faded, and I could only hear my family's cries. Later the crying stopped. I heard sounds of people coming and going, and soon after I heard Liang Wenxi's aged voice, and the hatred he had hidden in his heart for 50 whole years. Hating my father for using his official career prospects to force him into promising a lifetime commitment to one wife, preventing him from taking his beloved into our home. Hating my generous dowry that made everyone in the Liang family live at my mercy, leaving him without a single person in the entire Liang household he could speak his heart to. What he hated most was that I lived too long, occupying the position of legitimate wife for 50 years, enjoying all the wealth and glory, while his beloved was wrongly married off to another, and after death was wrapped in a straw mat and dumped in the outskirts for wild dogs to devour. I endured all these years, and finally, this day has come. You died before me after all. What a pity my Huan couldn't live to see this day. You snatched me away from Huan. Your father forbade me from having other women in my household, but the imperial titles and rewards you received through the Liang family should have belonged to Huan. Without you, my future would have been just as bright. It was because of you that I was constrained at every turn and lost my beloved. Lin Ruzhen, all of this is your fault. It is good that you are dead. Once I scatter your ashes, you can go down there and make amends to Huan Niang. After I died, my soul kept following Liang Wenxi. I watched him put on a show of crying, then naturally seized all the money and shops I left behind. Then he revealed his true colors, not only refusing to place my memorial tablet in the Liang family ancestral hall, but even having someone relocate a nameless grave from the outskirts into the ancestral tomb and register her as his wife in the family genealogy. He told my children that, after his death, he wanted to be buried together with Huan Yang. Only then did I understand that Liang Wenxi had hidden my ashes, refusing to let me rest in peace, just to threaten my children at this moment. Seeing my children being humiliated, overwhelming hatred surged within me. The eerie night wind knocked over the candlestand. Watching Liang Wenxi struggle in the sea of flames, I felt nothing but immense satisfaction. At that moment, several calls that seemed both near and far reached my ears. I instinctively turned around, and the scene before my eyes suddenly rewound. In the blink of an eye, I was no longer in the burning building, but standing behind the screen on the day the Liang family came to propose marriage. Before I could think it through, the matchmaker in the hall had already said a lot and was waiting for my mother to speak. Me hands beneath the long sleeves trembled uncontrollably, nails digging into my palms as I forced myself to calm down. Since I've gotten another chance, I'd like to see what bright future Liang Wenxi, a mere illegitimate son of the vice minister's family, could possibly have without me. I walked out from behind the screen, adopting the demeanor of a noble lady from my previous life, and gracefully bowed to everyone present in a proper manner. Only then did I look at the pale-faced Liang Wenxi and say, "Second young Master Liang, watch your words. We're not close enough for you to call me by my given name. Furthermore, did I say anything wrong?" Zhu Huaner, the tofu beauty from the west side of the city, has been showing off the jade token from the Liang residence to everyone, boasting about her mutual affection with the young master from the right vice minister's household, and that she is going to marry into a noble family to become the young madam. I glanced at the side door. Mingyu had already left. I believed it wouldn't be long before the happy news of second young Master Liang and the tofu beauty would spread far and wide. In my previous life, I only learned after my death that back then, Liang Wenxi had coaxed Zhu Huaner into willingly waiting to marry into the Liang family. Later, for the sake of the future, my father promised him. He abandoned Zhu Huaner, and she had no choice but to marry someone else. It was clearly his own insatiable greed. Yet in the end, he blamed everything on me, causing me to die without even a peaceful end. Since that is the case, in this life I am determined to bring everything out into the open and let everyone see who is truly the most despicable. I looked at Madame Liang and congratulated her with a smile. I suppose Madame Liang doesn't know about this happy news yet. I've heard that Zhu Huaner has a face like a lotus and a figure like a willow. Ruzhen hereby congratulates Madame Liang in advance on gaining a virtuous daughter-in-law. Liang Wenxi glared at me with a livid face and immediately started accusing. "Ruzhen, you are a lady from a noble family. When did you grow the gossipy tongue of a common marketplace woman, and you bring it up in the main hall when you clearly and I—" Thud. The round fan in Mother's hand dropped, the sound interrupting Liang Wenxi. Liang Wenxi realized he had misspoken and quickly shut his mouth, but his accusing gaze still fell on me. I pretended not to notice. Madame Liang, on the other hand, seemed to snap out of a dream and hurriedly smoothed things over with a smile. "Ruzhen is right. I truly didn't know about this matter." She glanced at Liang Wenxi, her eyes full of schadenfreude. Wenxi's concubine mother probably only heard it was the most outstanding and beautiful noble lady in the capital, and assumed it was Miss Ava. "This led me to rashly come to your residence to propose marriage, disturbing Madame and the young lady. I am truly sorry." While Madame Liang said sorry with her mouth, The joy on her face was unconcealed. She had originally worried that if Liang Wenxi really succeeded, his status as the left prime minister's son-in-law would threaten her son's future prospects. Unexpectedly, I not only ruthlessly made him lose face, but also exposed his affair of exchanging heartfelt words with someone else. Now it is great. Forget about the left prime minister's family. From now on, probably no other noble lady would be willing to marry him either. Madame Liang's words implied again and again that this matter was a scheme by Liang Wenxi and his birth mother, and Liang Wenxi's expression turned even uglier. He bowed to my silent mother, then yanked off the sachet from his waist and held it up in front of him, saying, "I don't know any Zhu Huaner at all. The affection between Miss Ava and me is guaranteed by this sachet. I ask Madam to investigate clearly." Mother glanced at the sachet that was obviously made by my hand and asked, "Did you make this?" I nodded, then put on an expression of shame and indignation and said, "This sachet was indeed made by me, but this is clearly the one you traded for with a folding fan at Prince Hui's mansion banquet last month. Now you are using it to slander my innocence. If I'd known this was your intention, I'd rather have given it to anyone else but you." As I spoke, I had someone fetch the folding fan from the room and threw it on the ground, putting on a full display of a young lady's demeanor, insisting that I didn't know what he meant at that time. These banquets in the capital have always had the custom of setting prizes for competitions, competing in all sorts of things. It just so happened that at Prince Hui's mansion banquet last month, the noble ladies competed in needlework. I really liked the first one I finished, and with a maiden's feelings in my heart, I hurriedly submitted a mediocre one and privately gave the best one to Liang Wenxi. The young masters competed in poetry, and Liang Wenxi casually gave me the folding fan with the inscription that didn't win the prize, also mimicking me by saying it was specially kept for me. Looking at it now, I only feel this poem is utter nonsense. What a waste of my sachet. Liang Wenxi angrily cursed at me for talking nonsense. Mother immediately set down the fan and turned to me, saying, "You, oh you. I usually tell you to watch your words and actions, but look at you, daring to accept and give away anything. Sooner or later you'll get tangled up with some shameless thing." After saying that, she turned to look at the Liang family and said, "I am truly sorry. My daughter has been spoiled recklessly by her father, brothers, and myself in the boudoir. She has forgotten such important etiquette and caused second young Master Liang to misunderstand. When the master returns, we will certainly discipline her properly." As for the rest, Madame Liang understood the hint, and ignoring Liang Wenxi's expression, smiled and agreed with a few words before leaving with her people. As they walked out the manor gates, I picked up the folding fan from the ground and chased after them. In front of the bustling manor gates, I looked at Liang Wenxi, whose face showed delight, and precisely smashed the folding fan into his face. "You think a broken fan is enough for me to marry you? Why don't you take a good measure of your own status first?" My voice was loud enough that the passers-by on the street fell silent for a moment before bursting into whispered discussions. Mother held back her laughter while apologizing, and only closed the gates after instructing the family doctor to come examine him. Once the door was closed, I threw myself into Mother's arms. In my previous life, when Mother sent me off to be married, she tripled the dowry she had originally brought from her maiden family, and gave me half of the farmland and shops under her name. Mother, who had been generous and dignified her whole life, sobbed uncontrollably in Father's arms. In the 6 years that followed, I bore 4 children for Liang Wenxi. Every time I gave birth, Mother made Liang Wenxi promise this would be the last one, until I nearly didn't survive giving birth to the 4th child. While I was unconscious, Mother submitted her token to enter the palace, obtained the prescription for a sterilization drug from the Empress Dowager, and with sword in hand, personally watched Liang Wenxi drink it all. Later, Mother went to the temple to practice asceticism, praying for my recovery until I woke up 8 months later. When she rushed to see me, her temples had already turned gray. The matter of the sterilizing medicine was something Liang Wenxi told my ashes after I died in my previous life. He said he and Huanyang had once talked about having 8 children, but since Huanyang died, it was my duty to bear them. Who would have thought that lowly woman wouldn't even let you have more children? Continuing the family line is what you are supposed to do. You can't even endure this bit of hardship. What a useless thing. Not even half as good as Huanyang. After father resigned from his post and returned to our hometown, mother wrote many letters to me. I proposed many times that I wanted to go to Lingnan to see mother. But Liang Wenxi said I was now the madam of the Liang family, and the Liang family couldn't do without me. By the time my son married and my daughter-in-law could manage things on her own, mother had already been dead for many years. And the last time I saw mother was in the carriage when she left the capital. Her hair had grown white strands, and her eyes were red and swollen from crying as she sighed again and again. When mother is no longer around, what will become of my Jenner? Now everything starts anew. Mother's hair hasn't yet grown white, and her embrace is still as warm as ever. She gently held me, her palm softly patting my shoulders and back, letting my tears soak her clothes, and spoke the same words as in my previous life. Such a big girl and still crying in mother's arms. When mother is no longer around, what will become of my Jenner? I want to say that later. After mother was gone, your daughter also learned to manage the household and started worrying about my own children. I remembered mother's appearance and teachings and became a formidable matriarch myself. But I want to talk more about the hardships along the way. Watching as my maternal family wasn't in the capital, suffering so much harassment. To tell how I helped my husband fight for the position of head of the Liang family, only to discover on my deathbed that I had married the wrong man, unable to rest in peace even after death. Mother, I was deceived all my life. Yet at death, I still looked forward to the next life. The incident at the Lin residence gates soon spread out, and everyone in the capital knew that second young master Liang had asked to marry the left prime minister's legitimate daughter with just a folding fan, only to be kicked out. Then some people said that second young master Liang had been secretly involved with the tofu beauty in the west of the city, even gave away his own jade token, and now he shamelessly came to propose marriage, wanting to eat homely dishes while also grabbing delicacies from the mountains and seas. The Liang family went back and shut their gates. At night they didn't even hang lanterns in front of the door. The entire residence was so quiet it seemed like no one was there. The guards sent out brought back news that at night, Liang Wenxi changed into a servant, boy's clothes, and crawled out through the dog hole to find Zhu Huaner. Zhu Huaner swore up and down that she had never spoken of her relationship with him in front of others. But the rumors about the two of them were spreading with vivid details, and Zhu Huaner really did have the Liang family's jade token. She wore it on her belt every day when setting up her stall. Before, others didn't know about it. But now that my people had spread the word, soon the whole capital would know what the Liang family's jade token looked like. Liang Wenxi threw a huge tantrum. He didn't believe Zhu Huaner's words at all. The two of them argued first. Then as they kept arguing, they ended up rolling into bed together. Poor Qingfeng, my guard had to eavesdrop by the wall for half the night. The next day, right after Qingfeng finished his report, a servant delivered a sappy letter from Liang Wenxi, asking me to give him time to find out who spread the rumors, and he would come propose to me with a clean reputation. As soon as Mingyue finished reading it, Qingfeng started mocking. He and Mingyue had been by my side since childhood, sharing my fate, always able to say what I, as a noble lady, couldn't easily say. Even the girls and boy courtesans in Yanliluxiang couldn't say such things when sweet-talking their patrons. Second young master Liang sure has thick skin. I had Mingyue burn the letter along with everything Liang Wenxi had sent before, then ordered Qingfeng to send those people who spread the news to the manor outside the city for a while, not to return without my orders. During those days, Liang Wenxi couldn't find any leads on the rumors, and didn't dare visit Zhu Huaner too often to relieve his urges. He was so worried that his lips broke out in sores and his spirits were low. I knew what he was worried about, but in this life without my help, I wanted to see what he could do. The legitimate eldest son of the Liang family, Liang Wenyue, entered officialdom 2 years ago as the second-place finisher in the palace examination. Highly valued by the emperor, he was taken by my father to Jiangnan to investigate salt taxes right after leaving the Hanlin Academy. He is just afraid that Liang Wenyue would return with achievements, making life increasingly difficult for him and his concubine mother in the Liang family. So Liang Wenxi planned every step carefully, just wanting to ride the wind of being the Lin family's son, in-law to fly out of the Liang residence's high walls. He has good looks, spent a year observing me, then half a year cultivating a half-true false good reputation among classmates, and finally approached me as if it were only natural, catered to my preferences, and tricked me step by step into his trap. Too bad at the final step, I suddenly jumped off his planned path, catching him completely off guard. I remember the salt tax case has concluded, and my father is now on his way back to the capital. Liang Wenyue helped my father a lot in Jiangnan, so I've decided to give him a big gift, ensuring he smoothly inherits the Liang family. The west side of the city has been quite lively lately. The tofu beauty first got entangled with second young master Liang, and now she has caught the eye of the wealthy merchant Squire Liu, who wants to take her in as a concubine. Zhu Huaner didn't dare refuse too harshly. After all, the place she lives and the spot where she sets up her stall are both rented from Squire Liu. She could only write to Liang Wenxi hesitatingly, begging him to save her. Second young master Liang didn't even spare it a glance at first. He was too busy investigating the rumors to deal with it. It was his concubine mother who came up with the idea, telling him to take the opportunity to get the jade token back. A few days ago, I had Mingyue prepare a carriage in the alley across from Zhu Huaner's house, all for today's show. Watching Liang Wenxi, dressed as a servant boy, being urgently dragged into the house by Zhu Huaner, Qingfeng went to eavesdrop by the wall for another quarter hour, returning with a smile all over his face. As you expected, Zhu Huaner indeed used aphrodisiac incense. The two didn't argue for long before rolling into bed together. They're holding each other and whispering sweet nothings right now, miss. Shall we make our move? I shook my head. What is the rush? The show will only be good when they're stark naked and in the heat of passion. Half an hour later, a cry of fire pierced the quiet night sky over the west side of the city. The night watchman's clappers woke up the neighbors, and the men of each household came out one after another to help put out the fire. When someone realized this was Zhu Huaner's house, the single men fought the fire even more vigorously. As the fire died down a bit, 2 people wrapped in soaking wet quilts rushed out. For a moment, everyone still helping fight the fire stopped what they were doing, staring in shock at the 2 soot-covered and barely clothed people. Right after, Zhu Huaner's scream rang out, and the sound of horse hooves came from afar. It was the Liang family, who had discovered in the middle of the night that their young master was missing. The carriage was hidden in the darkness. I propped my chin up and said with a smile, "Now the cast is all here. The stage is set. Let's see how the climax plays out." My gaze fell on Madame Liang, who had just stepped out of the carriage. When she saw the 2 people on the ground still shaken with fright, her first reaction was concern, rushing forward to check if her concubine, born son, was injured. Liang Wenxi clutched the blanket tightly to avoid embarrassing himself further. Lord Liang looked at everything before him with shock and fury, jumped off the carriage and strode forward, delivering a kick straight at Liang Wenxi. Caught off guard, Liang Wenxi was kicked over, and Zhu Huaner, wrapped in the blanket, was forced to tumble together with him, making the scene even more unseemly. The onlooking neighbors chattered among themselves. Lecherous men craned their necks trying to peek through gaps in the blanket. Lord Liang couldn't save face anymore, pointing at the 2 of them, stammering, You, for a long while without getting words out. Finally, he ordered the servants to carry the 2 onto the carriage, while he and Madame Liang sat outside with the coachman instead. The Liang family departed in a grand procession. Only after the fire was mostly extinguished did Qingfeng drive the carriage back to the Lin residence. That night, Qingfeng went to destroy the carriage. When Mingyu was attending to me as I went to bed, she asked me, "Miss, are you feeling happier now?" Looking at Mingyu's delicate face, I recalled my previous life. In the 10th year after she accompanied me into the Liang family, I returned her indenture contract and wanted to find her a good marriage match. But she insisted on staying with me, and stayed for 50 years. After I died, she was the first person to warn my children that Liang Wenxi had problems, and also the only one who insisted on bringing me back to the Lin family ancestral tomb. When she learned that Liang Wenxi refused to be buried together with me. But at that time, Liang Wenxi had lost my restraints and held great power. He only needed to lift a finger to have Mingyue die under unclear circumstances, her body thrown in a mass grave, unclaimed by anyone. As for Qingfeng, he had been noticed by my elder brother years ago and joined the military camp. By the time I died, he was already a third-rank guide general, stationed at the border with my elder brother, never to return to the capital. "I am happy," I patted Mingyue's hand and said softly. "With you here, I'll always be happy." Mingyue smiled until her brows curved, and tucked my hand back under the blanket. "Mingyue will always be by Miss's side, so Miss must always be happy too." Before dawn could even arrive, news spread like wildfire that the Tofu Beauty and second young master Liang had a secret rendezvous late at night, and in the heat of passion knocked over a candle and set the house ablaze. The scene of the two being carried away by the Liang family with barely any clothes on was even illustrated in storybook picture albums for people to gawk at. The censors wrote memorials overnight and submitted them. At the morning court, Master Liang was impeached for failing to discipline his family, and was punished with 3 months' salary deducted and half a month of house confinement. During that period, even the doctors the Liang family summoned had to enter through the side gate. The main gate was kept tightly shut, and the lanterns on the outer walls weren't hung again. In less than half a month, the group investigating the salt tax returned. What was brought back, besides corrupt officials, were gold, silver, and treasures, to be deposited into the national treasury. Once the treasury was replenished, the emperor was greatly pleased. Qingfeng said Lord Liang's house arrest had ended, and the Liang family gates opened again, joyfully welcoming their legitimate son. Arriving home before my father were rewards flowing like water. The accompanying guard said these were all things my father had picked out on the way back, all things that mother and I liked. The moment His Majesty asked what rewards my father wanted, he recited them as if reading from a script. Soon my father arrived home in a whirlwind, and the first words out of his mouth were, "My lady, Ruzhen, are the gifts to your liking." Mother chided him for being reckless, being so picky about His Majesty's rewards. My father laughed and wrapped his arm around Mother's shoulders, saying as he walked toward the front hall, "Such a rare opportunity. My lady has no idea. Those old scoundrels' private vaults were like treasure caves. Ruzhen, hurry and keep up. Father will tell you about this trip to Jiangnan." Looking at my father, whom I hadn't seen in decades, I suppressed the tears welling up inside and quickly followed. That night, my father called me to the study. On his way home from the palace, he had already heard from the old servant about what happened in the capital, and naturally learned about Liang Wenxi and Zhu Huaner as well. He placed a letter in front of me. This is from the legitimate eldest son of the Liang family. He contributed a lot in Jiangnan. I can tell he is someone who can shoulder responsibilities. Before I came back, I had planned to let you get to know him, but seeing the situation in his household, your father is uncertain again. Ruzhen, what do you think? I looked at the letter before me. On the envelope, vigorous and powerful handwriting read, "To Lin Ruzhen, personal in my previous life. Liang Wenye didn't concern himself with the inner household affairs, and because of official duties, he rarely came home, so we didn't interact much. At that time, Liang Wenxi's official career was flourishing. Liang Wenyue, as the legitimate son, seemed naturally at odds with Liang Wenxi. In the end, he was impeached by a group of censors trying to curry favor with Liang Wenxi, and was demoted to Jinyang, where he served as a county magistrate for the rest of his life. Lady Liang never recovered from that blow, and the household authority fell into my hands. As Lord Liang's influence waned, the head of the Liang family naturally became Liang Wenxi. Now that I've lived this life anew, Liang Wenxi has lost my assistance, and also lost the capital to fight against Lady Liang's branch. I've essentially cleared the obstacles from Liang Wenyue's future path. But if you want me to go through the Liang family again, I have no such inclination. I sat beside father, one hand propping up my chin, while the other picked up the envelope and held it over the candle flame, pretending to complain. Father already knows the Liang family's inner household is troubled, yet you still want your daughter to put herself in danger. Are you tired of me being annoying at home? Father took the burning letter and tossed it into the copper basin that a servant had prepared nearby. We quietly watched the letter burn to ashes before he spoke. If you want to, just go ahead and marry. Father will pave the way for you. My Rugen won't suffer one bit. In an instant, tears welled up. In my past life, before I got married, Father took me to dig up the 3 jars of daughter's red wine buried in the courtyard to add to my dowry, saying words no different from now. Just marry without worry. Father has paved the way for you. My Rugen won't suffer one bit. Before leaving the study, I asked Father what I should do if I misjudged the person and ended up suffering. Father smiled and said, "What suffering? It is merely the final treat for your opponent." Half a month later, Liang Wenxi and Zhu Huan got engaged. Liang Wenyue personally came to my house to deliver the invitation. He was much younger than in my memory, with sword-like brows and starry eyes, extraordinarily handsome. Miss Ava is unwilling to see me. Is it because of my second brother? His tone was certain. Before I could figure out how to respond, his next words nearly made me tear the invitation apart. Had I known earlier, I would have just killed him so as not to delay my marriage prospects. According to the laws of Great Qi, those who harm their own siblings are punished with 30 strokes. I replied instinctively, "Lord Liang has a bright official career ahead. Don't do anything foolish." He looked at me, seemingly not understanding why I reacted this way. "He deceived you. I thought you'd want his life too. Rather than letting him die quick and painless, I'd prefer to watch him scheme and plot only to end up with nothing, and finally cling to life in wretched desperation." This time, it was Liang Wenyue's turn to fall silent. After a long while, he finally nodded woodenly and said, "I understand." Then he turned and left. I wasn't sure how much he understood, but not long after, I heard that the marriage between Liang Wenxi and Zhu Huaner had run into complications. The doctor found that Zhu Huaner's body was severely damaged and suspected she had lost a child before. In the end, after the Liang family conducted thorough investigations both openly and secretly, they actually found the traveling quack, who had prescribed abortion medicine for Zhu Huaner 2 years ago. Second brother said he didn't know Zhu Huaner 2 years ago, so the child couldn't possibly be his. Zhu Huaner had long since lost her virginity. When they first had intercourse, Zhu Huaner deliberately picked a day when she was on her period. How careless. No wonder her body is still damaged after 2 years, I replied casually, then glanced at Liang Wenyue, who was following behind me with a calm and composed demeanor. "You are pretty careless too, telling me, an unmarried maiden, about your brother's bedroom affairs right here on the street. Aren't you afraid I'll report you to the authorities for indecency?" Liang Wenyue curled his lips with an indifferent look and changed the subject. "You were right. Watching him suffer is more interesting than killing him directly." Liang Wenxi sent me quite a few sappy letters and trinkets. I saved them up for a while before having someone return them all at once. Liang Wenyue heard about it from somewhere, took over this task from the servant boy, found a chest, and had it carried through the streets ostentatiously. Whenever anyone asked, He would say, "My illegitimate younger brother keeps sending things to the young lady of the Lin family, annoying her so much that she couldn't stand it anymore. So she told me to take them back and deal with them myself." The next day, when father returned from court, he told me that Lord Liang had been impeached again by a censor, accusing Liang Wenxi of improper conduct, being engaged yet still entangling with an unmarried noble lady. Lord Liang stormed off after court in a fury, probably to go discipline Liang Wenxi. Sure enough, the Liang family shut themselves in for several days. Then we heard news that Liang Wenxi's wedding date had been moved up. It was actually moved directly from next June to right after this year's autumn imperial examinations. Liang Wenxi's wicked heart wouldn't give up. Before the autumn examinations, he had someone deliver a letter to me saying, "When the autumn examination results are announced, if I can take first place, Ruzhen, can we start over?" I didn't reply, and simply took Qingfeng and Mingyu to Lingyin Temple for spiritual retreat, telling everyone it was to pray for my elder brother, who was suppressing the rebellion at the border. As for how others interpreted it, that wasn't my concern. I stayed until the day before the autumn examination results were announced. Before returning to the Lin family, His Majesty told father there was a great victory at the border, and my brother was already on his way back with the triumphant army. The victory announcement will be released together with the autumn examination rankings tomorrow. Ruzhen can go join in the excitement. I obediently agreed, and when father and I exchanged glances, we both clearly had stirring up trouble written in our eyes. The next day, when the results were posted, I brought Mingyu to see the imperial announcement board for the excitement. Just as I stepped out of the carriage, I heard someone shouting loudly, "Young Master Liang is the top scorer of this year's imperial examination." Everyone was chattering, gathering around Liang Wenxi and Zhu Huaner to offer congratulations. Liang Wenxi's reputation in the capital had been stinking for so long, and today he could finally hold his head high. Zhu Huaner, however, didn't have the joy of someone about to become a successful candidate's wife. She just clutched her handkerchief with a forced smile, her eyes darting around. Only when I walked closer did the two of them notice me at the same time. The joy on Liang Wenxi's face was overflowing, and the others around him also noticed me, naturally making way for us. Liang Wenxi lifted his foot to take a step toward me, but seemed to think of something, and ended up staying where he was, as if waiting for me to come forward and congratulate him. I heard Mingyue beside me let out a cold snort. Qingfeng had already squeezed her way to the imperial notice board. Just as I lifted my foot to leave, Zhu Huaner beat me to it, throwing herself down on her knees at my feet. "Miss Ava, please show mercy. Give this humble woman a way to live." Everyone present was dumbfounded by this kneeling, and no one even thought to help her up. "Miss Ava, you are a precious young lady, but this humble woman is also from a respectable family. Everyone in the capital knows about my relationship with Sailang, so why must you insist on competing with me?" More and more onlookers gathered around, whispering among themselves. Liang Wenxi quickly stepped forward, reaching out to pull Zhu Huaner up while scolding. "What are you making a fuss about again? How disgraceful. Get back here now." Zhu Huaner was slippery, like soft mud, looking weak and boneless, yet couldn't be dragged away no matter what. "You say I appeared here today to compete with you for second, young Master Liang. Do you have any evidence?" I looked at the tear-stained Zhu Huaner, asking a question I already knew the answer to. I watched with my own eyes as Zhu Huaner fumbled to take out a letter from her bosom, held it up, and proclaimed loudly, "I have here a letter that Sailang wrote to you, written in black and white that he wants to start over with you, Miss Ava. Do you dare say you didn't come today with such intentions?" "Of course I dare." I lifted my chin slightly, smiling brightly. "As you said yourself, the letter was written to me by Liang Wenxi. This lady didn't reply with a single word and had it sent back to the Liang residence unopened. Yet unexpectedly you intercepted it, and now you are making baseless accusations against my innocence." Miss Zhu, you keep saying you are asking me for a way to live, but this is clearly our first meeting, and I have absolutely no connection with your Silang. Where does this talk of a way to live come from? Liang Wenxi looked at me in disbelief, and Zhu Huaner was also choked by my words, only stammering after a long while. You speak so righteously, but didn't you still come? I gave Qingfeng, who was waiting in the distance, a look, and he immediately understood, shouting loudly, Miss Great News, a great victory at the border. The eldest young master will return to the capital any day now. Most people in the capital had heard about the legitimate daughter of the Lin family going into seclusion to pray for her brother's well-being. They all assumed I had come specifically to confirm after hearing rumors, not to compete for a man's affection as Zhu Huaner claimed. For a moment, everyone's gazes toward Liang Wenxi and Zhu Huaner turned strange. I shifted my gaze back to the two of them and their wonderfully colorful expressions, and said unhurriedly, Second young master, Liang, is already engaged. In the future, you should exercise more restraint over your words and actions. If this matter spreads to the court, the ones who'll be implicated are still the two Lord Liangs. Although Miss Zhu comes from a poor background, she is still a respectable woman. Since you've taken her innocence, you should naturally give her an explanation. Only then would all those years of studying the sage's classics not be in vain. I deliberately bit down hard on the word innocence. The expressions of those present varied, some teasing, some mocking, and when these looks fell upon the two of them, it was quite satisfying to watch. Liang Wenxi, who had just been so proud of himself for passing the imperial examination, was now humiliated again. He violently shook off Zhu Huaner and pointed at me, stammering, You, for a long while without managing to say anything coherent, before flinging his sleeves and leaving. Zhu Huaner hurriedly scrambled up to chase after him, but when she caught up to the carriage, she was kicked off again. She could only run behind in a pathetic mess. After accepting everyone's compliments on the spot and returning the courtesies, I had just arrived at the entrance when I heard a servant announce that Liang Wenyue was waiting for me in the garden. Liang Wenyue must have come right after the morning court session, still wearing his vermilion official robes. The first thing he said upon seeing me was, I thought you were really going to start over with him. His tone carried a hint of aggrieved accusation, leaving me puzzled. I couldn't understand why he thought I would forgive Liang Wenxi, nor why he seemed aggrieved. I didn't want to be accused without reason, so I spoke my feelings directly. Liang Wenyue was stunned upon hearing them. I thought you already knew. I am different from my second brother, he murmured to himself. I nodded and spoke frankly. Lord Liang is indeed different from the second young master Liang. Whether in background, appearance, or talent and learning, Lord Liang surpasses him in every way. Given time, you will surely become a pillar of the nation. The reason you are interested in me is firstly because my family background can help you rise to the top, and secondly, because I despise Liang Wenxi just as you do. But that doesn't mean I would like you. Besides, as far as I know, Lord Liang already has 2 bedwarmers in his chambers, and has also met with several noble ladies under Madame Liang's arrangements. I am not your only choice, am I? Liang Wenyue was rendered speechless. After a while, he finally replied, As long as you agree, I'll have Mother decline the invitations from other noble families. The bedwarmers will be sent away immediately too, so they won't be an eyesore to you. I shook my head and looked up at him. I don't insist on others swearing oaths to be with me alone for a lifetime. After all, most vows are like empty words. They pass through the lips but never enter the heart. I am only saying this to tell you that I don't like men like you, and you don't have any romantic feelings for me either. I am merely the best choice among noble ladies, but even without me, it wouldn't stop you from marrying another girl or having fun with other women. You just need an ally who is of one mind with you. I'd be the best, but if not me, anyone else would do. My words were blunt, and Liang Wenyue couldn't refute them, so he could only hastily take his leave. I instructed the gatekeeper not to let visitors in casually from now on. With my father and brother now being trusted ministers, we must be even more careful and cautious in our dealings with others. It wasn't long before Liang Wenxi was pressured into marrying Zhu Huaner. Since Zhu Huaner had always lived at the Liang residence, the so-called bridal procession was just a short walk from the side gate to the main gate. There were no betrothal gifts or dowry, not many guests attended, and the wedding was simple and sloppy. Even the lanterns and red silk were taken down after just one night. Before long, I heard that because Zhu Huaner's health made it difficult for her to bear children, several concubines were brought in through the side gate. The second young master, Liang's courtyard, was in utter chaos all day long. Liang Wenxi had to review his studies for next year's palace examination, while also sleeping in different rooms each night, listening to everyone's complaints. He was visibly worn out and dispirited. Liang Wenye came looking for me a few more times, but was turned away by the gatekeeper each time. Gradually, he stopped coming. Before long, his marriage was also settled, to the legitimate daughter of the vice director of the Central Secretariat, with the wedding set for early spring next year. The invitation was personally delivered by Liang Wenyu, who politely and sincerely said, "What happened before was my own stubbornness, only thinking of myself, and I ended up being rude to you, miss. I am truly sorry." I accepted the invitation, and the previous matters were considered settled. Before the new year, my brother Lin Fenggu returned to the capital. Just like in my previous life, this battle my brother fought secured 20 years of peace at the border. The emperor was greatly pleased, and noble titles and high positions were inevitable. In my previous life, so that Liang Wenxi's career could go further, and so I could have more standing in my husband's family. Although my brother refused the noble title, he stayed at the border holding the tiger tally, which inevitably made the emperor wary of him. Now, without those concerns, my brother peacefully handed over the tiger tally, accepted an idle position, and was granted the title of Marquis Huan, staying in the capital for a family reunion. My days completely returned to peace, and all the past with the Liang family seemed like a nightmare. After waking up, I was still Lin Ruzhen at 16 years of age. During those days of the palace examination the following year, my brother was on duty in the palace. When he came back, he couldn't wait to tell me about the big incident that happened during the examination. Liang Wenxi had probably been worn out by those beauties at home. He looked listless, his steps unsteady. The earlier written exams on classics and poetry were still passable, but during the policy questions, Liang Wenxi would often zone out mid-sentence, or say things that were completely off-topic, making the examiner scowl. During the metropolitan examination, His Majesty had a sudden whim to personally test this illegitimate son of the Liang family. As a result, Liang Wenxi not only stuttered when speaking, but even forgot his answers halfway through. And because of his nervousness, he broke out in cold sweat in the April weather. After standing before His Majesty for the time it takes an incense stick to burn, he looked like he'd been fished out of water. His Majesty was so angered his face darkened, making him the only tribute scholar since Diqi established the imperial examinations to enter the palace examination, and still fail. When being escorted out, his steps were so unsteady that he tripped over the threshold of Taihe Hall and immediately fainted. When he woke up, he had gone mad, insisting he was the Zhuangyuan, that his wife was the legitimate daughter of the Lin family, and that he would rise to the highest position in court in the future. Hearing this, I had a bad feeling in my heart. Sure enough, a few days later, Liang Wenxi rushed to the front of the Lin mansion in a crazed state, demanding to see me. "This isn't right. Ruzhen, come out. Tell them you are my legal wife. I am the new Zhuangyuan." I hid in the inner room, listening to Ming Yue relay everything to me, confirming that Liang Wenxi had also experienced rebirth. It is just that the timing of his rebirth was bad for him. He had already been banned from examinations for his disgraceful conduct before the emperor, and could never enter officialdom in this lifetime. Only after the Liang family members hurriedly arrived did I appear before Liang Wenxi. He looked at me and suddenly burst into tears. "Regen, it is wrong. Everything is wrong." I didn't reply. Madame Liang brought Zhu Huaner to bow respectfully and apologize before me, while I just quietly watched the Liang family drag him onto the carriage. Only when the carriage was locked did I turn to look at them and say with implications, "The Marquise's residence is hosting a banquet today, with many nobles visiting. If I hadn't delayed things for a while, you two madams would be trying to bail him out from the Marquise's guards by now. Since he is ill, he should stay home and rest properly. As for bringing glory to the family name, that still depends on the two lords in court." Madame Liang nodded, repeatedly in agreement. Before long, word came that the second young master Liang had fallen ill in the middle of the night, tumbled into a dry well and broken his leg. He would never walk properly again for the rest of his life. I heard from the servants that the second young master Liang had drunk a lot that night, muttering about newlywed bliss, wedding night candles, wandering into the abandoned courtyard with his wine cup. By the time the servants found him, it was already too late. As for why the abandoned courtyard that had been locked for years was suddenly open that day, no one cared about that anymore.